I remember the sound before the pain. The soft creak of my bedroom door at 2 o'clock. A.M. am a kind that slips under your skin before your mind wakes up. I opened my eyes to see Mason's silhouette standing over me, the hallway light cutting across the knife in his hand. For a second, I couldn't move. Then the heat hit my side, sharp and blinding, and his breath brushed my ear like a warning I was never meant to survive. But the worst part wasn't the blade. It was what my parents did afterward. I used to tell myself that every family had rules that didn't make sense, and ours just happened to have more of them. In the Reed-Halley house, doors stayed open. Conversations stayed shallow, and anything uncomfortable was dismissed before it fully reached the air. Douglas called it keeping harmony. I called it surviving with my back against a wall. Most mornings, I left my bedroom with a quiet hope that today would be normal. I'd walk into the kitchen, sweater sleeves pulled over my hands, pretending the cold tile wasn't a reminder of how tense this house always felt. Karen would be at the counter, hair perfectly curled, even at 7 a.m., chatting with Mason like he was the son she woke up to. I'd murmur a soft morning, and she'd smile back, warm, polite, distant. The kind of smile you give a neighbor, not your daughter. Mason always played the harmless boy role perfectly. He'd grin, tousle his hair, and say something like, "Sleep okay, Savannah," in that syrupy, sweet tone that made Douglas beam with pride. Only I noticed the lingering way his eyes drifted to my room upstairs. Only I felt the chill. The little things started small. My wallet coming up short by about $1.40 at the drawer where I kept my journal left slightly open. A pair of earrings missing from the dish by my mirror. I tried to bring it up, hesitant, careful, choosing every word, like I was defusing a bomb. But Karen never let me finish. "You probably misplaced it," she'd say, barely looking to it from whatever she was slicing. "You get scattering during exam season." Douglas was worse. "Savannah, you need to stop imagining problems. We don't lock doors in this house because we trust each other. That's what families do." His voice was firm, final, like the matter was closed before I'd even begun. But trust isn't blind. It feels different. Warm, steady, honest. Whatever this house held, it wasn't that. The night I found my bottle of sleep medication missing several pills, I stood in the hallway listening to the soft hum of the vent, my heart thudding like it was trying to warn me. I wanted to believe it was an accident. I wanted to believe anything but the truth, settling heavily in my chest, that someone had been in my room again, and no one in this house cared enough to wonder why. By the time I slid into the booth at Riverwalk Diner the next afternoon, I felt like my nerves were pulled taut thread by thread. The familiar smell of brewed coffee and warm syrup should have calmed me, but nothing could quiet the thought that had kept me awake all night. Someone was in my room again. Alina took one look at me and pushed her iced latte aside. "Savannah, you look like you've been running from a ghost." "I might be," I whispered. My hands shook as I unwrapped a straw. Money went missing again. My journal drawer was open and my medication, 3 pills gone. Her eyes widened, sharp and focused now. "And you're sure, Mason?" Who else could it be? I didn't raise my voice, but anger flickered beneath every word, and every time I try to talk to them, they treat me like I'm unstable. "That's not instability," Alina said. "That's manipulation." She leaned closer. "Sev, you need proof. Something they can't twist." I stared at her, heart pounding. "Like what? Like video? Didn't you keep your old phone from sophomore year?" I had. It was sitting in a drawer at home. Slow and cracked, but still able to record. The idea made my stomach tighten with both fear and relief. That night, after dinner, I slipped the old phone behind a stack of books on my dresser, angled toward the door. I tested the recording once, making sure the screen stayed dark. My hands were trembling by the time I clicked it into place. 3 days passed. 3 nights of light, sleeping every creak, sharpening my senses. Then early Saturday morning, I finally had the courage to check the footage. I wish I hadn't watched it alone. At 1:47 a.m., the door eased open. Mason stepped inside like he'd done it 100 times. He didn't search. He prowled. He went through my backpack, thumbed through the cash pocket, and slipped bills into his jeans. He opened my journal reading pages like they were his, right? And then my breath caught. He stood at the foot of my bed for 7 full minutes. He didn't move, didn't reach for anything, just stared at me, sleeping. I felt sick. I took the phone straight to Alina's apartment, my hands numb the whole drive. She watched the footage in utter silence, one hand pressed to her mouth. When it ended, she looked at me with a kind of fear that wasn't for herself. "You have to show Karen," she said, "right now. She can't deny this." "She will," I said softly. "But I'll try." That evening after dinner, I connected the phone to the living room TV. Karen and Douglas settled on the couch. Mason lingering in the hallway. The house felt too still, too rehearsed. "What is this about?" Douglas asked, irritated. "You need to see something," I said. When the footage filled the screen, the room went silent. And then everything inside me cracked when Douglas finally spoke. "This proves nothing." For a second, I thought Douglas was joking. No one with functioning eyes could watch. Mason rummaged through my things and then hover over my sleeping body and call it nothing. But his expression stayed cold, carved from stone. Karen folded her arms. "Savannah, this is exactly what we've been talking about. You always assumed the worst. Mason was probably looking for something you borrowed." My throat tightened. My backpack, my wallet, my journal, at 2 in the morning. "Watch your tone," Douglas snapped. "You set up a hidden camera in our house. That's the real issue here." I felt the floor tilt beneath me. The truth was on the screen. It wasn't enough. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat upright in bed lights on, staring at the door as if I could hold it closed with sheer will. The footage replayed in my mind, until dawn broke in pale streaks across the walls when the attack happened, when I woke to the burn of a blade slicing into my side at 2 a.m. It felt inevitable, like every ignored warning had been leading to that moment. I remembered Mason's whisper close to my ear, shaky, paranoid. "I know what you're doing. You won't ruin this for me." Then the footsteps, then darkness. The next thing I knew, bright hospital lights glared overhead. The sheets felt scratchy, the air smelled like antiseptic, and moving even an inch sent pain radiating through my ribs. Detective Monroe sat beside my bed, a small notebook resting on his knee. "Savannah, I need you to walk me through what happened," he said gently. I told him everything, my voice thin but steady. The missing money, the missing pills, the video, the laughter. "That video is important," he said. "We already entered your phone into evidence." Before I could ask more, voices drifted from the hallway. Karen and Douglas. My pulse spiked. They stepped into the room with faces I didn't recognize. Not shocked, not relieved, not grieving, just annoyed. When Monroe asked for their statement, Douglas let out a short, dismissive laugh. "She's doing this for attention." "She stabbed herself." "She's been unstable for months." Karen nodded along. "She's jealous of Mason, always has been." I felt something inside me tear. Their laughter in a hospital. A room where I lay, stitched and shaking, was the clearest betrayal I'd ever known. But Monroe's jaw tightened. He looked at them differently now. For the first time, someone finally did. Detective Monroe returned the next morning with a woman at his side. Sharp suit, steady eyes, the kind of presence that makes a room feel smaller. She introduced herself as Detective Sloan and took a seat near the foot of my hospital bed. "We've been interviewing students at your school," Sloan said, flipping open a small notebook. "Several classmates mentioned Mason bragging about messing with you. One boy said Mason talked about going into your room at night. Thought it made him look bold." My stomach churned. "He bragged about that." Monroe nodded grimly. "He also told a student he'd been selling medication that didn't belong to him." Sloan lifted a small evidence bag. Inside was my sleep medication. My label carefully peeled off the bottle scuffed. "We recovered this from his locker," she said, along with a few things belonging to other students. My breath caught. "So you believe me?" Monroe leaned forward. "Savannah, the evidence is stacking up fast. But when he told Karen and Douglas about the findings, they doubled down. Karen insisted the items were planted. Douglas, said the detectives, were being manipulated by a dramatic teenager, desperate for attention. Their denial should have hurt. Instead, it clarified everything. My family wasn't confused. They were choosing a reality where I was the problem because it protected the image they clung to. Protecting Mason meant more to them than protecting me. 2 weeks later, I was released from the hospital and moved into Alina's house. Her mom hugged me so tightly my ribs ogged. But in a strange way, the ache felt good, like someone finally cared if I hurt. The preliminary hearing arrived faster than I expected. The courthouse was colder than I imagined. High ceilings, echoing footsteps, the faint smell of old paper. Alina squeezed my hand as we walked through the metal detector. "You're not alone," she whispered. And for the first time, I believed it. Inside, Ada Camille Foster, short-haired, calm confident, stood at our table. "Savannah," she said, "I need you to stay steady. The defense is going to question your credibility. They'll push hard, but we have the truth." The Reed family entered moments later. Karen didn't look at me. Douglas shot me a glare that felt like a warning. Mason shuffled behind them in a juvenile detention uniform, looking smaller than I remembered, but his eyes were the same, cold, calculating. The hearing began with testimony from Monroe and Sloan. They laid out the facts: the missing money, the missing pills, the no-locked doors rule my repeated attempts to report concerns, and the video footage. When the video played on the court's large screen, a hush fell over the room. There he was, Mason, moving through my room with chilling confidence, touching my things, standing over my sleeping body like he owned the air. I breathed. Karen flinched, but only for a second. Douglas whispered something to her, and her expression hardened again. Then Sloan presented the items from Mason's locker, the medication, the belongings stolen from other students, notes from interviews, every piece fitting together like a puzzle. No one wanted to admit had always been there, but the moment that shifted, the room came when Dr. Rowan took the stand. She spoke with gentle firmness, explaining my therapy sessions after my father's death, my increasing anxiety over the last 8 months, and her documented concerns that the home environment was causing emotional harm. "Savannah has never displayed signs of self-harm," she said. "Not once in 18 months. Her fears were consistent, specific, and expressed long before the attack." The defense attorney stood. "Isn't it possible she staged these events for attention?" Dr. Rowan didn't flinch. "Attention-seeking doesn't create stab wounds." The courtroom murmured. Then it was my turn. I walked to the witness stand on legs that felt borrowed. The microphone seemed too close, too loud, but when I glanced at Alina, at Dr. Rowan, at Monroe, all looking at me with belief I had never received at home, I found my voice. I told them everything. The fear, the gaslighting, the nights lying awake listening for footsteps, the video, the attack, waking up to my parents laughing in the hospital hallway. When I finished, silence settled over the room like dust. Then Mason was called. His attorney warned him, but he still took the stand. Maybe he thought he could charm the judge. Maybe, he thought, Karen and Douglas's unwavering support meant the law would bend for him too. At first, he denied everything. Said he'd gone into my room for a charger. Said he never touched my medication. Said the footage was taken out of context. But Ad Forster didn't let up. "Why were her pills in your locker?" she asked. He swallowed hard. "Someone put them in the items belonging to other students. I don't. And how do you explain standing over her bed for 7 minutes?" He faltered. The courtroom felt like it was holding its breath. Then he blurted, "I didn't mean to hurt her." Karen gasped. Douglas cursed under his breath. Mason kept going, panicked. "It wasn't supposed to go that far. I just wanted her to stop recording. She was trying to ruin everything." I closed my eyes as a wave of nausea hit. There it was, the admission. Foster nodded calmly. "So you did enter her room that night?" His jaw clenched. "Yes, but not like... And you did stab her." His voice broke. "It wasn't deep. I didn't." Judge Carter raised a hand. That's enough." The room fell silent. She looked at Mason with a severity that made even the air feel heavier. "This court has heard enough. Mr. Reed, your actions were deliberate, dangerous, and predatory. And the conduct of the adults in your home." Her eyes cut to Karen, "And Douglas is nothing short of morally indefensible." I gripped the edge of the bench, heart hammering. She continued, voice steady as stone, "For the charge of assault resulting in serious bodily injury, you will remain in juvenile detention until age 21. Upon release, you will undergo mandatory supervised probation. You are prohibited from contacting Savannah Hale for the rest of your life." Mason sagged in his seat. Judge Carter turned to Karen and Douglas next. "As for you two, this court finds your dismissal and mockery of your daughter's suffering appalling. You are sentenced to supervised probation, community service, mandatory parenting courses, and full financial responsibility for Savannah's medical and therapy bills." The gavel hit. Just like that, the moment in the thumbnail became reality. The judge had read his sentence, and for the first time since that awful night, I felt the weight on my chest lift. I moved into Alina's house the same afternoon the sentencing ended. Her mom set a plate of warm food in front of me before I even sat down, the kind of simple kindness that made my throat tighten. For the first time in months, I slept through the night without jolting awake at every sound. Life didn't snap back to normal. It shifted slowly, gently into something safer. I spent mornings helping Alina with homework at the kitchen table, afternoons walking through quiet neighborhoods where the air didn't feel heavy, and evenings journaling without fear of someone reading over my shoulder. My stitches healed, the nightmares softened. Even the hospital smell dissolved from my memory. Detective Monroe checked in once just to make sure I was okay. Dr. Rowan helped me piece myself back together, reminding me that surviving wasn't weakness. It was proof of who I'd always been beneath the fear. When college application season came, I found myself drawn to criminal justice. Not out of anger, out of clarity. If someone hadn't believed me, if someone hadn't pushed past the lies, I don't know where I'd be. I wanted to be that person for someone else someday. Some nights, I still think about the girl. I was the one who slept with her door half open because she wasn't allowed to protect herself. But I'm not her anymore. I learned that speaking up isn't betrayal. It's survival. And if you're living through something that feels wrong, trust your voice. It matters more than you know. Share your story in the comments and subscribe so you don't face the next chapter alone.